I hate Furina. I think she's egotistical, rude, narcissistic, dim-witted, and self-involved to the point of damaging others' lives. She seems to let whatever strikes her fancy control her day-by-day indulgences, whether that be at others' expense or not. And above all, she's a bad god. I hated Furina until she became one of my favorite characters in all of media. This is why Furina is the most important character in Genshin Impact. Okay, so I never really hated Furina, to be completely honest, though I did really look down on her. I found her girl fail, loser girl boss patheticness quite endearing, which is actually something I look back on and cringe. With the end of the ARCHON quest, I found myself really enjoying her story and finding it to be so much more than a plot twist or a gasp of excitement when you figure out what's going on. What the f is going on here on this day? I'm so confused. And then when you look deeper, you realize that her story can be this beautiful message about mental health and how it manifests in different ways and the struggle within it. Her story and the metaphors that it represents can be so important and so powerful for a lot of people that find themselves struggling just like her. And this video is to explain to you why I think so. Hey, my name is E, as in like to E or not to E. Yeah, that's the question. And welcome to, or hey, welcome back to my channel, where we are continuing the discussion on the overlooked sides to Genshin Impact that can mean a lot to a lot of different people. So without any further ado, let's talk about one of the best characters in this game, Furina, Genshin Impact. Her last name's Genshin Impact. But wait, pause. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe because it'll make me happy. And you want to make me happy, don't you? Not me manipulating you. Is it working? I'm joking. And also, of course, please make sure to join us over on twitch.tv/eissocial. Okay, on with the video. Okay, so just to be abundantly clear, this whole video is like a massive spoiler for the entirety of the Fontaine ARCHON quest and also, of course, Furina's story quest. So if you do not want to get spoiled, now would be the time to click off. But you have to watch one of my other videos. I'm so sorry, I do not make the rules. I do, and I also enforce them. Anyways, you have thus been warned. When we first meet Furina, her entrance is overly dramatic and quite the spectacle. An entrance fitting for an out-of-touch and egotistical ruler. She immediately rubs audiences the wrong way, wrongfully accusing the traveler and boasting her regality in such an extreme way that it seems like it comes from a place of insecurity. As we continue with the ARCHON quest, we notice her flaws. She fails in the trial against Lyney after prematurely accusing him of murder just to appease the overall spectacle of her audience. We notice how she stammers a bit before she projects some bullshit excuse with a grandiose stage presence, and we watch as she nervously asks Neuvillette to join her as she meets with Arlecchino. In the final act of the ARCHON quest, Furina is put on trial for pretending to be the Hydro Archon. She tries to prove with all of her might that she is a god. She is their god. She grows more and more hysterical as no one believes her. She is delivered a guilty verdict, and her sentence is death. She sits back and weeps on her chair, eyes empty and lifeless. All of her energy that was once bursting at the seams is gone. She's given up. And just as the oratrice is about to seemingly take her life, we finally get answers. The traveler comes into contact with her tears and gets sent into her inner subconscious. Here, we meet the real Furina. This scene is one of the most impactful scenes in Genshin, I would argue. So right now, we're going to really pick it apart bit by bit just to see what Furina is all about. First of all, the whole scene of her inner life and subconscious takes place on the stage. As you assume the role of Furina, you can look around and notice even the traveler is gone. Oh look, she's all alone. She is completely alone on this gigantic, enormous stage. We learn that Furina is actually the split human version of Focalor, the real Hydro Archon. Focalor appears in Furina's mirror, explaining her role that she must take up. Furina is to play the part of the regal Hydro Archon and not let anyone know that she's merely a human playing dress up. If anyone is to find out, then the whole of Fontaine will perish. This is the burden she must shoulder. This is the prison she must live in. To get this out of Furina initially, we had to turn several spotlights off of her. Of course, metaphorically, this symbolizes us taking the pressure of being watched off of her, for even in her subconscious, she felt like she was being observed. This implies that she was even monitoring and controlling her own thoughts almost every waking moment, not letting herself slip up from this lie even in her mind. As the lights leave, we see her meeting with Focalor and her taking on this duty. She rises to the stand in front of the audience and prepares herself for her big speech. This is another flashback where we see her first take on the persona of the Hydro Archon. She starts off her speech to the people of Fontaine as humble and kind, but the disembodied voices from the audience won't stand for it. They thought an Archon was supposed to be impressive. She just seems like a human. Noticing their mean words, Furina immediately switches things up to being an over-the-top, self-absorbed, self-righteous ruler. She makes herself into what they wanted of her. They seem taken aback, but they accept it. This is now their god. Next, we visit Furina as she goes to and from 4 different settings on the stage. Each setting represents the different points in her day-to-day life. There is a desk where she does her usual work from, a couch where she gets visited by her subjects, a library where she does research on the prophecy, and a bed where she sleeps to get ready for the next day that repeats this cycle again and again and again. Each spot is on the stage. A stage so huge, she seems almost insignificant on it. Every moment of her life, even when she rests her head, is a performance. A performance for a crowd to boo, to celebrate, to critique. We see each day in her life how she acts more and more bratty to keep people off her scent, and how each night she sits on her bed, a spotlight blinding her, a small hunched over figure on a gigantic stage. As she thinks to herself, did I mess up today? She has been doing this for 500 years, for 182,376 days. One day, she starts to cry in front of one of her subjects, and yet she doesn't even notice the tears. It should also be noted that every single time she plays out one of these scenes on the stage, her counterparts or scene partners are invisible every time. The people that join her unknowingly in this grand production are nowhere to be found in her subconscious. It's because they were never really there for her. This symbolizes how truly isolated she was, where even though she was constantly surrounded by people every day, she was alone. She could not let a single soul know of her secret. So each day was a solo performance on a stage to an audience she can't even see, but who is watching her every single move. She's been truly alone for 500 years. Each person that came and went was merely a voice to remind her of her prison, and a voice that never belonged to a body that she could rely on. That is until the traveler forces her to unburden herself. For one split moment, Furina decides to think selfishly. The traveler is not of Teyvat. Just maybe she can tell them how she feels. And at that moment, the traveler appears before her, a real person. For once in 500 years, she's no longer alone on her stage. She has a friend. That is, until she makes the rather admirable decision and rejects the traveler's offer. And with traveler's resignation, they disappear. And Furina is all alone on the stage once more. I was so blown away by this part of the Archon quest, and it took me from finding Furina to be endearingly pathetic to actually wanting to cry for how much suffering she had to endure. She never asked to be put in this position. She never knew what the right thing to do was. All she knew was that if she faltered for even 1 second, everyone that she knew would be gone. The burden of that alone would drive anyone to the depth of madness if they had to do it for a week, let alone 500 years, dude. 500 years. So before I continue expanding on these tiny moments in this part of the story and how it greater relates to a bigger metaphor representing mental health and the talk surrounding it, I would first like to focus on her position as a public figure and the cycle of torture that is present for those that find themselves to be in a position similar to her. Okay, so first off, the part of the story where Furina assumes the stage and addresses an empty audience is one of my favorite parts in this whole little subsection. She speaks very humbly and earnestly when addressing them, speaking as her true self. There are several ways you can interpret this scene, but the first way that I will discuss is how it displays the very essence of what it's like to be a public figure. Furina stands in front of people that aren't there, people that she can't see, and yet they have so much influence over how she acts and behaves. When you're a ruler such as her, you often do not see all of your subjects or all of the people who look up to you. All you hear are their criticisms. And this scene in particular makes me think of Marie Antoinette. Furina was definitely inspired by Marie. And I'm not just saying that because they're both French, okay? And also Marie was technically Austrian. She was just like the Queen of France. I'll get into it. It's kind of like undeniable, the inspiration there, so it's kind of like obvious. I'm not really breaking the code here. And also, yeah, I'm sorry, okay? I have a little bit of history in every single one of my videos, all right? I just love history. Also, it informs modern day storytelling, and I'm cooking. Let me cook. When you want to talk about over-the-top, out-of-touch rulers, usually Marie Antoinette is brought into the discussion, but she is very misunderstood. She was a child when she was sent to marry Louis and was a simple girl. She struggled to read and write and could barely speak her new language of French. She was married at 14 and was immediately raised in the kind of opulence that would befit a queen. She became Queen of France at 19. Like Furina, Marie had no choice in becoming Queen of France. She simply took on what was expected of her. And what was expected of the Queen of France? Well, of course, expensive gowns and high fashion and opulent living. So she took up this mantle, and the people hated her for it. Like Furina, Marie was a victim of this consumer to public figure torturous cycle. She became what was asked of her, though she had no choice from the beginning, and it was this image that led to her downfall. Marie was a sweet woman underneath everything, and even tried to care for the poor people of France, but it wasn't enough. France was going through a terrible economic crisis, with the brunt of it going all onto the commoners who couldn't even afford bread anymore. They saw their queen spending buttloads of money, seemingly uncaring and out of touch with their situation. And of course, as the story goes, when Marie heard that her people couldn't afford bread anymore, she said the famous line, "Let them eat cake." She was so out of touch, but she just didn't know what she was doing. So when the revolution happened and they got a hold of this out of touch woman, they killed her. Furina too seemed like she didn't care about her nation's prophecy or her nation's fate. She instead bounced around, enjoying her little operas and eating cake. Little did everyone know that from the moment Furina stepped into the spotlight, all she could think about was saving her people. She held studies on the side to monitor Fontaine's water levels, but maintained a rather ditzy, out-of-touch appearance to keep people off of her scent. She seemed like the Marie Antoinette of her nation, out of touch, dressing regally, ignoring the suffering of her people, and eating cake. When, with both figures, it was the exact opposite, and they both paid the price for it. Also, yes, Focalor literally getting yeeted from life by a giant guillotine. Very on the nose, because that's what happened to Marie Antoinette in the end. But Furina's alive. So that's just another parallel between the two of them. Also, the whole cake motif. Like, Furina is undoubtedly inspired by Marie, which I think is really cool because I think Wriothesley did a really good job showcasing the two of them and the struggles of each and the often misunderstood nature of both of them. Marie is all the time misunderstood by historians as this malicious, purposefully ignorant ruler, when really she was just this sheltered, unaware, simple woman who was thrusted into this position of the spotlight with no real help or guidance on what she should be doing. She was constantly monitored in every aspect of her life, like Furina, and found only the expectations of her people wherever she went. When she upheld those expectations, she died. When Furina became what her people wanted of her, she was mocked and ridiculed. Understanding Marie can help us understand Furina in many different ways. And with that, we can start to unpack the general metaphor for Furina and her struggle, and for millions of people that can relate to it. So, as I mentioned earlier, I find Furina's entire journey to be quite the metaphor for mental health. So, with this portion of the video, I want to avoid trying to diagnose Furina with a certain genre of mental illness because that is so not the point, and also just in really poor taste. So, instead, I'm going to be going down the route of story analysis metaphor kind of direction, just like how I did in the transcoding of Wanderer video, which you should definitely check out after this one. Hi, it's a good one. It's a good watch. So yes, that is the plan for right now. Furina's entire struggle of having to pretend and to put on a brave face every single day is already just a huge metaphor for people with mental health issues or chronic illness that isn't super visible. It's a term called masking, where individuals will go to great lengths to conceal their inner struggles and their emotions to better fit in with the people around them. The term is more often used when talking about autistic individuals who mask their autistic traits every single day in order to make the people around them more comfortable. This act of suppression can be quite burdensome and overwhelming to people who have to go through it in order to avoid ridicule by the society around them. Some fear that if they do not mask, then they will face some sort of repercussions if they are found out, such as losing their job or getting looked down on or being bullied. Having to hide and pretend is an essential part to Furina's story. And I also think it's the biggest source of relatability to those who do mask, and they can also relate to just how tiring it is. A common symptom of depression is losing the ability to take care of yourself, such as brushing your teeth or even taking a shower. The spoon theory, which was first coined by Christine Miserandino, is a way of contextualizing how life is for those with chronic or mental illness. Christine explained it as each morning you wake up with a set number of spoons, or energy levels, and each activity you do throughout the day takes a spoon away. For the general public, showering or making a meal for yourself wouldn't take away a spoon. It's just kind of something to do. But to those with chronic or mental illness, showering or making a meal for yourself could take away an entire spoon or even multiple, and you don't even have that many to begin with. This lack of spoons can be seen in Furina. She asks herself where her limit was. Did she hit it already? How much time does she have left, and how long can she keep doing this? Having to mask and pretend like you're just big chillin' when there's a whole war going on inside takes up so many spoons I cannot even begin to describe to you. How many spoons did Furina have to sacrifice to get through what she had to go through? She must be exhausted. Not to mention out of cutlery. Furina isolates herself throughout her entire tenure as the Hydro Archon, which is also an act that many people who struggle with mental illness go through. Isolating and putting on a brave face in order to conceal what you're feeling inside is what people do every single day. You never know when someone is struggling, and you never know if someone is shouldering a burden that is almost unbearable. Like with Furina, society's quick to judge and quick to put others in a box. We all made fun of Furina, remember? We all called her the dumbest Archon, and we laughed at her until we found out just how much she had to go through. It is most certainly a lesson we can all carry on to for the people around us. You never know what someone is going through, what show they're putting on, what demons they're fighting, or how many goddamn spoons they have. Furina also seems to be suffering from imposter syndrome, which is where you fundamentally believe you do not feel qualified or deserving of being in a certain successful position, even though all of your outward qualities do. When kids get into a prestigious college, or when people get hired for a very impressive job, they can feel as though they didn't deserve to be there, and they just kind of weaseled themselves in. They feel like they just have to pretend that they deserve to be there, which is a sentiment very mirrored with Furina. She didn't choose to be the Archon. She didn't choose to have this responsibility, and yet she found herself in it. She wasn't a god. She's but a human putting on a show. And having that sense of doubt and self-hatred for 500 years, it's just ridiculous. Also, the scene where Furina took the stand to introduce herself in front of all the empty chairs and was met with backlash by disembodied voices could represent overthinking. This is a very good way of showcasing the act of assuming that others think the absolute worst of you, though there isn't much evidence to prove that. There was no one in the audience. Yet their thoughts got their way into Furina's head to change how she acted. She was changing herself, which she thought others wanted of her, assuming they would hate her for being her, and immediately changing to be something she thinks they want. This overthinking and low self-esteem also showed itself in her story quest, when at the beginning, she talks about how she assumes everyone already hates her, and if she went to go ask for help from any of her previous colleagues, they would just laugh in her face and mock her. She also assumed that when she first ran into the Traveler, that they were going to make fun of her from her fall from grace. To anyone who knows her story, she's a hero, but like how mental health is mostly perceived, she was not entirely taken seriously. Not everyone truly understood what she went through or what she had to endure for everyone. She's not celebrated in the streets and applauded wherever she goes. Her struggles seemingly went unsung, as she now mostly stays indoors making macaroni, since that's all she really wants to make. In my eyes, Furina should be hoisted up as a true savior of Fontaine, but she isn't, and she still is laughed at by the fandom, where we continue to mischaracterize her and say that she's not a good cook, she's a bad cook. All she knows is how to make macaroni, as if her signature dish isn't the most complicated cake on the whole planet. She's going through her depression meal phase, okay? Just leave her alone. She only has so many spoons left for her name. If she wants to spend those spoons making the same macaroni dish a million times, leave her alone. That's just her coping.
Oh, sounds like you're really struggling to cope.
I see her decision of only making macaroni as her finally exhibiting a sense of control, something she just hasn't had for the past 500 years. So she's enforcing this newfound sense of control onto her eating habits. So seeing Paimon and others make fun of her makes me kind of sad, because it's kind of like those who know just kind of no. Also, her boundaries aren't respected enough as well. She set a boundary to never act again, and yet Paimon kept pushing her to help out this random theater troupe. So she turns out to start helping the theater troupe and then ends up performing last minute, only because the lead actress got sick. And this is where she got her vision during the middle of the play. Okay, so I don't entirely know how to feel about this decision. To be honest, I don't like it. I don't like how they handled this in her storyline. Because for once, she made a decision for herself. She decided she did not want to act anymore. The true Furina, the real Furina, does not want to act anymore, and she can make that decision. She's got the freedom to finally do it for once. And then, I don't know, having her decision being proved wrong, that's how she gets her vision. It's kind of like taking away her whole agency when having no agency was like her whole thing for the past 500 years. But I guess it kind of forces that, yeah, the true Furina actually really does like acting, and also she doesn't need to define her new self by the absence or presence of her old self. She could just be herself too. Okay. Still, like, from the writer's perspective, she still could have found her own purpose that wasn't so closely tied to the torture she had to go through for the past 500 years. She could have been a baker. You know what I mean? Like, could have been anything else. Could have taken up water painting, you know? This lack of boundary respect is another aspect that people who struggle with mental illness find themselves dealing with, where they're finally able to put into words how they feel and to actively make a boundary, only for others to either ignore it or to take advantage of that boundary. So, to better understand why this is so important, it's facts and figures time, baby. According to the World Health Organization, in 2019, it was found that 970 million people worldwide, or 1 in every 8 people, were actively living with a mental disorder, with depression and anxiety being the most common culprits. Pause. Let me say that again. 1 in every 8 people. You know someone, or you are that someone. That is just a fact. So this is important to listen and talk about. And unsurprisingly, in 2020, with the pandemic sweeping the land, the amount of people who suffered from anxiety and depression rose 26% and 28% respectively. According to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in 5 Americans have experienced a mental illness, with 1 in 25 currently live with a serious one. Though mental health awareness is the best it has ever been, with worries that you may or may not get adequate health care if diagnosed, or not getting hired for that special job, concerns over actually going to therapy or getting help with what you experience are very prevalent. A poll in 2019 by the American Psychiatric Association found that talking about mental health in the work environment is still sort of taboo, with 1 in 3 people who were surveyed said they feared repercussions and possibly even being fired if they were to actively seek out help for their mental health. A survey in 2020 found that young people ages 14 to 22 who were experiencing experiencing signs of depression, took to the internet to try and find anecdotes from others who struggle like them in order to find relatability. And that fact right there is why I'm making this video. Whether it is first realized or not, Furina's story can be that anecdote or that representation to the millions of people who find relatability with it. And the first step to do when trying to destigmatize to talk about mental health is to talk about it. In a discussion with Neuvillette, Focalor describes Furina as the perfect human. She represents the human condition, filled with life, hope, dreams, doubt, insecurities, and fear. She represents us at our best and at our worst. She's the Marie Antoinette of the world, a gentle, caring soul that we failed, forced to be misunderstood and misrepresented, mocked and laughed at. I don't want us to laugh at her anymore. She has gone through too much to be made fun of. She deserves your respect. And it's a shame that she had to suffer for 500 years in order to have earned it. For me, I wanted to make this video not only because you guys recommended it, but also because I see myself a lot in Furina. As someone with the mental illness myself, and don't say, yeah, we could tell. Don't say that. Hi, don't be rude. I find her entire struggle to be very relatable, okay? Stop saying we know. I'm trying to be vulnerable with you guys right now, and you guys are making fun of me. Hi, you have mental illness. That is so funny. I literally suffer every day. Okay, I am constantly just pretending that I don't struggle myself. And even saying this right now, hey, I gotta crack some jokes. Hey, I gotta make a light of the situation right now because I do not want to talk about it. I just don't. I have anxiety, buckets full, plenty to share even, and probably others too, but those haven't debuted yet, so keep a lookout. And every morning, from as long as I can remember, I wake up asking myself, is my brain just gonna be okay today? Is it gonna try to fight me today? Is it gonna work? Today was a kind of good brain day, you know? It's always like a coin flip when I wake up. I just don't know. Every day where I feel like I'm in control is an absolute win. So seeing Furina have to go through all of this and not really having anybody to rely on is just kind of like cool to see in media. Seeing her having to pretend and having to hide and all of her doubts and all of this and her anxiety and her crying without even realize she was crying. It was great for me. Personally, I'm gonna take this for me right now. It was great for me. I don't know about y'all. It was great for me though. They wrote Furina for me. It validates you, you know? It tells you that, yeah, dude, it is hard to just pretend that none of this is happening. And it is valid to find this struggle a struggle. And when I found out about the spoon theory, for example, it changed everything for me. Also, it was kind of crazy to me to realize that most people don't spend their spoons taking a shower. I thought that was normal. Was it? Not normal. Hi. Not normal at all, apparently. So it's good to talk about the spoon theory and to see yourself in Furina and to have characters like Furina and how their stories can mirror and reflect our own struggles that we experience day-to-day life. That's what storytelling's all about. Furina is such a complex character with these beautiful highs and these devastating lows, with hidden struggles and a burden that will take years to ease off of. Like Marie Antoinette, she is constantly wrongfully ridiculed and made fun of. She did the best she could, and she is in the process of finding out who the real Furina is. Does she like the arts? Does she want to act? What would she like to do with her life? Who is she? Her struggles as a public figure and her internal struggles prove to be quite the representation for those who find themselves in her. She is a symbol of strength to those that have to hide themselves, and also some sort of hope that that burden will someday ease off of their shoulders. Furina was put in an impossible situation, but you don't have to be. I know this is corny, but you really aren't alone. There's so many people that can relate to what you're going through or what someone you know goes through. You do not have to take the stage all by yourself. There will always be a traveler that can be there for you. And when you take your final bow, I hope it is alongside people who celebrate and love you for who you really are. And I hope Furina finds peace. She deserves it. As Focalor said, she truly is the perfect human. And that is why Furina is the most important character in Genshin Impact to me. Hey, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Before you leave, please make sure to like the video and subscribe because, hey, 77% of y'all have not. Also, when I say the subscribe button and the like button, apparently, like, the buttons themselves glow up all rainbow and stuff. Like, that is so cool. Go check it out, and then when you see it, click it. I know I'm saying it kind of jokey, but please, if you don't mind, please subscribe and like the video. It really helps out the channel a whole ton. And also, if you want to hang out more with me and with an amazing community, then make sure to join us over on twitch.tv/eissocial. We are live 3 to 4 times a week, and we have an amazing, gorgeous time. I cannot wait to see what Genshin Impact does with Furina in the future and with the entirety of the Fontaine cast. So let me know which character from the Fontaine ARCHON quest is your favorite character. Do you like Furina? And if you don't like Furina, tell me why, and also how it feels to have a terrible opinion. Let me know what other deep dives I should do into the storytelling and or characters of the game. I would love to hear them. Also, if you want to hang out some more, follow me over on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. Okay, well, that is it from me. So please be kind to yourself today. And if I don't see you on Twitch, then I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Also, I own him, ironically. It's ironic. And I have him out here with his bare ass feet just to make you guys suffer. Did you suffer? I hope so. If you didn't, ew. Freak.